From time travelers to the most recent evidence of Planet X, plus some mysterious disappearances, here are 10 mysterious events that will make you question reality. Time-traveling stock genius. In March of 2003, the FBI arrested a man named Andrew Carlson. He was 44 years old at the time and had one of the luckiest runs on the stock market in the entire history of the stock market. In only 2 weeks, Andrew turned an initial $800 investment into an incredible $350 million. This obviously caught the eye of the proper authorities, and the FBI quickly investigated Andrew. They wanted to charge him with insider trading, and Andrew made a full confession. But he told the FBI that not only was he an inside trader, all of his 126 high-risk trades paid off because he traveled from 250 years in the future and knew that they would make him rich. Obviously, the FBI laughed this off as a ridiculous excuse. The FBI was sure that he was doing inside trading since every single trade he made paid off big, and that kind of thing is just not possible even if you are the luckiest man on Earth. The FBI asked Andrew for his sources, but he would never give them up. Apparently, Andrew did offer to tell the authorities the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden and give them the cure for AIDS as part of his plea bargain. It's unknown to this day whether he gave them the information or not. In any case, the FBI could find no records of Andrew's existence prior to 3 months before they arrested him. Then, an unidentified person posted his bail for $1 million, and Andrew quickly vanished and was never seen or heard from again. Either he really was from the future, or Andrew was the luckiest guy ever. Do you invest in the stock market? How have your investments gone? Are you going to be the next Andrew Carlson? Let me know what you think in the comments below, but don't reveal any inside information. Do remember to subscribe if you haven't already though. If you like this video, you'll love what's up next right here on Talltanic. The Ice Woman. The story of the Ice Woman is really going to make you question what is possible in this reality. The event went down in the small town of Langby on the night of December 20th, 1980. Jean Hilliard was a 19-year-old girl, and after meeting some friends in town, she was on her way home at about midnight when she got in an accident. She was driving down the street when her car hit a ditch and broke down. It was below 20 degrees outside, and all she was wearing was cowboy boots. She got out of her car and thought she could walk to her friend's house through the cold, and she almost got there too. She finally saw her friend's house through the trees, and just when she did, everything went black. Supposedly, Jean made it to her friend's yard, then crawled on her hands and knees to his doorstep. And that was where she lay for 6 full hours with her eyes frozen open. But of course, Jean never remembered any of it. Jean was frozen so solid that doctors at the hospital couldn't even get an IV into her arm when she was finally admitted. And besides, they already thought she was dead. But then in the morning, Jean woke up. She had thawed out and by noon was totally okay. According to a professor from the University of Minnesota, this kind of thing can happen with extreme hypothermia. Basically, Jean went into a kind of frozen hibernation, then gradually thawed out and was otherwise undamaged. But nonetheless, it's an absolute miracle that she lived. Doctors had even been considering amputating both her legs to avoid a frostbite infection, but she ended up being totally fine. Legend of the Ghost Ship. The mystery of the ghost ship has never been solved. It's an absolutely bizarre event that occurred in 1921, when the schooner named Carol A. Deering was spotted by a lighthouse keeper on January 29th bound for its home port. He could never have expected that the unthinkable would happen. According to Captain Jacobson, the keeper of the lighthouse, he initially saw the crewmen of the Carol A. Deering wandering around suspiciously on the foredeck of the ship, but the ship never pulled into port. Then on January 31st, the Coast Guard came up on the ship run aground with its sails set and the lifeboats missing. The boat was abandoned. Nobody knows what happened to the crew, but they vanished like ghosts. They took their personal belongings with them, some navigational equipment, and they even took the ship's anchor. Even after a long and exhausting investigation by the FBI, the ship's logs were never found and there was no trace of the crew ever discovered. To this date, the ship remains an unsolved mystery. Nobody knows what happened to the crew, why they were wandering around on the deck on January 29th, why they never pulled into the port, or where they could have gone. There are some theories. Some say that there was a mutiny, some say pirates attacked them, and others say that they were besieged by gangsters who were running rum illegally. But the truth is that this mystery will never be solved. The Babushka Lady. The assassination of JFK was one of the most pivotal moments in US history. It's also the source of a lot of conspiracy theories. One of the most mysterious aspects of this fateful day must be the Babushka Lady. On November 22nd, 1963, there were many people on the streets of Dallas to watch the president's motorcade pass by. There were also a lot of photographs taken of the scene that day. Over the years, most of the people seen in the photographs have been identified, but not the babushka lady. She is a mysterious woman seen in many different photos standing in the grass wearing what appears to be a traditional Russian headscarf. She also appears to be taking a photograph of the exact moment JFK was shot. Even to this day, nobody has any clue who this woman was. The big questions here are, why was she alone? Why was she positioned in such a way that she could easily snapshot the exact moment of the president's death? Why didn't she run while all the other people around her were running for cover or freaking out? She seems completely calm even after the shot goes off. Was she a spy, a Secret Service agent, a man dressed as a woman, or an assassin from the future? Nobody knows for sure. Malaysia Flight 370. Perhaps the most recent mysterious event of the last few years was when Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared on March 8, 2014 after departing Kuala Lumpur. The plane had been heading for Beijing with 227 passengers and 12 crew when it vanished off the face of the earth. It was there 1 second and the next it had vanished off the radar and was simply gone. To this day, the aircraft has not been found and neither have the bodies. Most people agree that something fishy is going on with this flight. In all likelihood, it crashed into the Indian Ocean and was then covered up by the Malaysian government. Of course, this is all just speculation. Other people claim that there was a hijacking, that the aircraft controls were taken over by electric virus technology as part of a larger scheme, that there was a terrorist attack, that investors were assassinated using the flight because of a certain patent that was worth a fortune, or even that the United States captured the plane and then flew it into a special military base. Despite all these wild theories, some of which can be pretty convincing, nobody really knows what happened to this flight. How many governments are involved in a potential cover-up, how far the conspiracy goes, or if it was just truly a mysterious accident. Planet X. As far as conspiracy theories go, Planet X is at the top of the weird scale. Some say that Planet X is hiding on the other side of our sun, some people say it's very close to Earth but completely invisible, and some people claim that Planet X is populated by aliens who have been watching us secretly for centuries. In any case, according to The Verge, there is new evidence that suggests Planet X could actually be real. Prepare to have your concept of reality shattered. Scientists have found a small object orbiting far from the sun that fits in with the theory of Planet X. Astronomers are even saying that the small object may be on the path it's taking now because of the hidden planet's gravity. This unknown object is nicknamed the Goblin, and it was spotted by astronomers in Hawaii back in 2015. For the next 4 years, researchers followed its trip around the sun. Observations showed that the small object takes an outstanding 40,000 years to complete a single orbit around the sun. This could be because its gravity is influenced by a hidden planet totally undetected by us at the edge of our solar system. There are actually 14 space rocks sharing in this orbit, with their paths unnecessarily elongated around the sun. It could be that they are in fact circling the mysterious Planet X. Time-traveling hipster. One look at this photo from the 1940s and it's immediately obvious that there is something horribly wrong. The original photograph was taken at the 1941 reopening of the South Fork Bridge in Canada. When the museum digitized and then uploaded all of its collection of photos online back in 2010, somebody noticed this photograph of a guy dressed a little too casually for the 1940s. It does indeed appear that a time traveler was actually caught in a photograph. He has a modern t-shirt with a logo on it, wraparound sunglasses, and a small portable camera. One glance and you can instantly tell this guy is from the future. But wait, this guy has actually been debunked. The photo itself is not fake, but it would be a little weird if someone traveled backwards in time just to take some photos of a bridge reopening in Canada. Let's break it down a little. The t-shirt he's wearing actually has a logo on it for the Montreal Maroons, which was a hockey team that played in the NHL from between 1924 and 1938. It checks out. Then special glasses with protective side shields were available in the 1940s. The style of eyewear was not popular, but they were definitely around. And finally, Kodak did make small portable cameras that were available in 1941. Everything this guy is wearing in the photograph fits with the times. Perhaps what makes him really stand out is the fact that he's surrounded by older guys in suits and hats. Or maybe we're all wrong and he's a time-traveling tourist. The Dancing Plague of 1518. Most people don't know about the Dancing Plague of 1518. This was a bizarre phenomenon that happened in the city of Strasbourg, which then would have been part of the Holy Roman Empire. According to History.com, residents of this town were struck by an abrupt and uncontrollable urge to dance. It was complete hysteria. It all began when a woman stepped into the street and began to twist, twirl, and shake completely silently. She supposedly kept dancing for a full week, and before long, at least 36 other residents joined in her dancing. By the month of August, the dancing epidemic had at least 400 victims. Local physicians at the time blamed the dancing outbreak on hot blood and suggested that people were trying to dance the fever away. While this may seem fun, it definitely was not for the people who suffered from it. Some died from strokes, some died from heart attacks, and some simply dropped from exhaustion and died. The dancing went on until September, when the dancers were forced up the side of a mountain to a special shrine where they could pray for absolution. So what actually happened? Well, according to historian John Waller, it was likely a mixture of belief and fear. The people back then did believe that curses were real, and they were constantly afraid of disease and famine. It could have been a stress-induced hysteria that caused so many people to dance to their death. Or it could be something even stranger and more unexplainable than that. The WOW signal. The WOW signal is the strangest thing that ever came to us from outer space. It appeared on August 15, 1977, and was picked up by the Big Ear telescope at The Ohio State University. The signal lasted for a full 72 seconds and was more complex and more intense than any other signal that has ever been picked up by the satellite from space. Another interesting thing about the signal is that it was a narrow bandwidth signal, more similar to something created artificially. The signal was also at the exact same frequency as radio waves that are emitted by neutral hydrogen gas in space. The region that it came from was completely silent other than this signal. For many, this has been indisputable evidence of extraterrestrial life. It could have been a signal sent from a UFO, picked up by us, but we are too stupid currently to decipher what it meant. All efforts to figure out the signal have failed, and since 1977, the signal has not repeated. Some have said that the signal was simply made by a passing comet, but others say that's nonsense. I'll let you be the judge. The Anjikuni disappearance. One of the strangest phenomena is mass disappearances. This is when a town, a whole ship, or an entire household goes missing all at once with no evidence of what happened to the people. One of the most blatant instances of mass disappearances in history happened in November of 1930 in a small Canadian village. The village had been occupied by the Inuit people, and it was located on the shores of Lake Anjikuni. What had once been an industrial village became a ghost town overnight. The town was discovered first by a Canadian fur trader named Joe, who was seeking shelter from the cold and accidentally stumbled upon the village. He had been there before and knew that a lot of people lived there. However, in 1930 when he returned there, not a single soul was left in the village. What makes the story even stranger is that there were pots of stew still steaming, huts full of clothing and food, and still not a single human soul. Even more mysterious was the fact that there were no footprints in the snow and no sled dogs. Joe eventually made his way to the nearest telegraph office, where he sent a message to the Canadian Mounted Police for help. The police searched the village, and what they found is simply terrifying. At the village burial ground, all the graves had been unearthed and were empty. It was as if all the dead people clawed their way out of the graves and then walked away. And to make things even more mysterious, the Mounties apparently saw pulsing blue lights above the village that then faded into the darkness of the horizon. In total, 2,000 Inuit people went missing without a trace and were never found again. Japanese midget sub. Remnants of World War II can be found all over the planet, but not only on the shores of Europe and in the secret nuclear bunkers of the Midwest. Evidence of wartime can even be found in secluded islands all across the ocean between Japan and the United States. Specifically, we're looking at a midget submarine rusting away on the small island of Attu, west from Alaska. Back in the 1940s, the Japanese took control of this tiny island and built a midget submarine base on it. The United States eventually invaded the island and sabotaged the Japanese equipment, but they did not get rid of their garbage. The bulk of the base has either been removed or completely overgrown, but there is one relic left. The last true remnant of the Japanese presence is a submarine rusted and grown over by nature. In another few years, it will probably be completely under the grass. It is in a pretty remote part of the world, so you're unlikely to ever stumble upon it by accident, but it's still cool to know that these pieces of history are still left scattered across the globe. Plus, Mother Nature doesn't seem to have a problem swallowing them into the ground. GM EV1. Abandoned and neglected in an Atlanta parking garage is one of the rarest cars in the world. It's the GM EV1, and it might not be much to look at right off the bat, but believe me when I say this car is rare. According to The Drive, this was the first realistic electric car crafted by a modern automaker. It was also destroyed because of corporate greed almost 20 years ago now. This is because the EV1 worked so well that some people were afraid it would damage gasoline profits. At least that's the theory. Even today, the EV1 is the most advanced electric car the company has ever designed and produced. Despite this, the EV1 was declared a failed experiment and most of them were destroyed by General Motors. However, it's been estimated that roughly 20 of them managed to escape and one of them has been abandoned for an undetermined amount of time in this random parking lot in Atlanta. It was first reported of in 2019, so it's difficult to say if it's still sitting in the same place. Also, nobody really knows who put it there or why. It's a total mystery. DeLorean DMC-12. Not every DeLorean DMC-12 can travel to the future, not every DeLorean is taken care of either. Recent photographs have surfaced of this incredibly unique and unmistakably historical car found abandoned in a dark and creepy part of a North Carolina forest. As reported by Auto Evolution, the car was found by a couple of guys after they heard of rumors of it rusting away somewhere near Sacramento. And lo and behold, in the forest they found the car. It's a huge shame as this is one of the rarest and most unique automobiles in the world. The DeLorean probably has more niche fans than almost any other vehicle out there. Obviously, it became famous after being used to travel to the future in the Back to the Future movie trilogy. But what a lot of people don't know is that the DeLorean is a real car. It came equipped with a 2.8-liter V6 engine, it could kick out 150 horsepower, and it came either with a 5-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic transmission. As for the abandoned vehicle sitting in the middle of the forest, nobody knows how it got there or from which timeline it came, but it's safe to say that it will not be going anywhere again soon. If you could have any car in the world, what would you get? Let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like these. Concorde of the Sea. A lot of people don't realize that hovercrafts have actually been in service for quite some time. Specifically, there are two famous hovercrafts that were used during the 1970s as a sophisticated way to get between Britain and France. This is one of the most traveled channels in the entire world, with people going back and forth between Great Britain and mainland Europe every single day. And while hovercrafts are pretty cool, they became completely obsolete after the Channel Tunnel was completed between the two pieces of land connecting France to England via a passage under the water. In 2000, the Princess Anne and Princess Margaret hovercraft were decommissioned and left abandoned. This once glorious and prestigious way to cross the channel became nothing but a memory. Now it looks like the crafts will end up being destroyed. In a recent report from the Daily Mail, they tell of how the abandoned hovercrafts are being handed over to the government in exchange for the owner not having to pay rent for all the years they sat abandoned. After these hovercrafts are lost, it's doubtful any new ones will be made. VVA-14 Experimental Amphibious Aircraft. The Bartini-Beriev VVA-14 was a vertical takeoff amphibious aircraft from the Soviets. It's one of the most unique vehicles on the planet, to the point that it barely makes sense. The craft was developed in the 1970s and given the ability to fly at high speeds for long distances while also being able to take off from the water. It could also fly directly above the sea surface by using an advanced aerodynamic technique. However, after the original engineer died in 1974, the Soviets didn't really care about this weird vehicle anymore. It didn't serve much of a purpose, it was absolutely enormous, and there were more advanced things on the rise. So the project was scrapped and the VVA-14 was left abandoned. Thankfully, somebody had enough brains to tow the thing to the Russian Federation Central Air Force Museum in 1987, where it was rescued and put on display as the only remaining version of this vehicle. Abandoned Space Shuttle. A photographer in Russia stumbled upon one of the most unique abandoned vehicles ever. It wasn't even really a vehicle, it was a wooden spaceship sitting seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Apparently, the wooden model is an exact 1:3 scale replica that was used to test the aerodynamics of the larger spacecrafts in a wind tunnel machine. It's actually sitting abandoned in an old section of an airfield, which itself has also been abandoned. The wooden space shuttle is in pretty rough shape, but it's fascinating since it's the only one of its kind. The man who photographed the shuttle thinks it was based on the VKK Space Orbiter platform, which was originally created to beat the USA to a reusable space vehicle in the 1980s. It's likely the only piece of the program left, an old wooden replica rotting away in the middle of nowhere. Mallows Bay. 30 miles from Washington, D.C. is Mallows Bay, home to a massive maritime burial ground with some of the most peculiar abandoned vehicles ever. This place is home to over 100 wooden steamships from World War I that were cast off as being obsolete and left to slowly decay. It's arguably one of the most amazing scrapyards ever. It's also home to bald eagles, beavers, and river otters. It's a fascinating place that began roughly 100 years ago in 1917 as a place to abandon ships that were no longer useful. Now it's filled with a massive ghost fleet of half-finished vessels and forgotten crafts. Up until 1931, many of the vehicles had been scrapped properly. Not because of money issues, the scrapping stopped and everything has just been left as is. Now, it's basically just a big garbage heap that's popularly visited by people in kayaks taking photos of the decrepit vessels. If you want to see some of the most unique boats in the world, or at least what is left of them, you have to take a trip to Malos Bay. Russian fighter jet. Here is one of the most unique fighter jets in the world. The Tu Interceptor planes are rare enough as it is, but this particular training model only had about 10 produced in the 1970s. An aviation photographer found the only surviving one of its kind. It was located at a repair plant in rural Russia, and it appears to have been abandoned for quite a long time. This aircraft was used to train Soviet interceptor pilots, and what makes it so unique is that the instructor pilot's cockpit is located at the top of the airplane. This is much different from the normal Tu interceptors that were heavily used after the 70s. The Tu interceptors were long-range bomber planes capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Because of its unique appearance, many pilots have referred to this plane as a Pelican plane. Apparently, locals had tried to set this abandoned fighter jet up as a monument in their city square but couldn't get it through the front gates, which is why it's covered in a bunch of scratches. It has a broken wing too, and it's probably not going to be moved again until it's been consumed by weeds. As for the local town square, the villagers managed to get a similar Su-15 fighter jet through the gates, and that became their monument. The Mars Rover Opportunity. The saddest abandoned vehicle on our list, and definitely the most expensive and unique, is not even located on Earth. In 2019, NASA had no choice but to abandon the Mars Rover Opportunity and declared it officially deceased. The Mars Rover Opportunity was a six-wheeled vehicle that had been running around Mars for many years before it lost power in a dust storm and basically died. According to an associate administrator for NASA's Science Mission Directorate, the Opportunity had completed its mission and would no longer be used. In other words, NASA had to abandon their rover. This is a huge shame considering the robot functioned on the Red Planet for over 14 years, although that is a pretty magnificent achievement considering the original mission was only supposed to last for 90 days. The rover managed to go 25 miles and send back to Earth thousands of pictures that have shaped the way we view our neighbor planet. As things look now, the rover will be abandoned in the dust until it completely decays, maybe in 1,000 years. The Hunley Submarine. The Hunley submarine was the world's first successful combat submarine. It set out on February 17, 1864 with a singular mission in mind. This ancient submarine belonged to the Confederate Army, and it was manned by 8 soldiers. It also carried a bomb. The submarine slipped into the waters off the coast of Charleston, and the crew of 8 hand-cranked the sub through the water for about 20 miles up the coast until they found the Union blockader USS Housatonic. The submarine then surfaced, fired off its torpedo, and blew apart the hull of the Housatonic in just a matter of seconds. Unfortunately, minutes later, the Hunley submarine sank with the entire crew still inside. It then sat at the bottom of the ocean abandoned and forgotten until excavations in 2000 brought the submarine back from the dead over 150 years later. This is arguably the most unique submarine ever rescued from its abandonment at the bottom of the ocean. There are definitely more impressive submarines that have been saved or abandoned over the years, but the world's first successful combat submarine manned by the evil Confederate Army is a historical treasure regardless what you think about the Civil War. Something that's really interesting about this story is that nobody had known why the ship sank after it successfully blew the other ship out of the water. It was not until the submarine was excavated and studied that we learned what happened. According to a United States Navy biomedical engineer from Duke University's Pratt School of Engineering, it's likely that the blast from the submarine's own torpedo sent a shockwave through its iron hull that killed all 8 men inside instantly, causing the submarine to sink shortly after. The submarine is now sitting at the Hunley Lab in a specialized water tank in North Charleston. Which abandoned vehicle is your favorite? From strange new family planning techniques to evidence that could bring us closer to cloning woolly mammoths, here are 8 unsettling discoveries that might change history. 3-parent babies. A controversial procedure that allows mothers with DNA-based genetic diseases to replace their faulty mitochondria with healthy mitochondria from a donor sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. These diseases can affect different parts of the body, but are only passed down through the mother to their children. For women who have these types of diseases and want to safeguard their future children, this replacement therapy allows for that, but it does not come without controversy. Some of these mitochondrial deficiencies, including blindness, diabetes, and hearing loss, are terrifying to parents who don't want their children to acquire disease later in life. But the replacement therapy, which takes damaged mitochondria from one patient and replaces it with the healthy mitochondria from another, has only been performed once in a human. The technique has some ethical concerns, with some worrying that the sensitive technique on early cells could disrupt others and cause further defects down the line. But for those who are worried about giving birth to children with defects, the controversial procedure is a risk they are willing to take, even if it is illegal in some places. In 2016, a child was born to a mother with a fatal disorder that affects her nervous system. Worried that their child would develop the disease, the couple underwent a procedure in which the mother's egg and a donor's egg were both fertilized by the father's sperm. Then, before the fertilized egg started dividing, both of the nuclei were removed and the nucleus from the donor's fertilized egg was discarded and replaced by the one from the mother's fertilized egg. This, in theory, resulted in a 3-parent child, but the couple had to travel to Mexico to have the procedure done. While some believe it helps to save lives, others think it is more controversial and even goes against some religious beliefs. Either way, this treatment and similar ones to obtain the same result remain a cause for debate in the medical community, with some arguing it saves more lives than those it puts at risk. What do you think of this treatment? Is it ethical? Would you do it if you knew you had a genetic illness that might be passed down to your child? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to keep up with the latest videos. Mammoth Island in Siberia. Thousands of years after the woolly mammoth vanished from mainland Alaska, a small number still live on an island in the Bering Sea, and all it took was one scientist's discovery in an underground cave to prove it. After descending into the underground cavern, scientist Matt Wooler uncovered an interesting link to the past. There on an island to remove a core sample from a crater lake, Wooler found a tooth from a mammoth among the bones of other mammoths, caribou, polar bears, and Arctic foxes. Radiocarbon dating showed the mammoth died 6,500 years ago. After finding dust and pollen in the original core sample, the scientists hoped to find evidence of mammoths as well as info on how they died and when they might have happened. Pollen grains and fungus that lived on dung dropped by mammoths helped them to pinpoint when the creatures were alive. Located on the island of St. Paul, the core sample showed off 10,000 years of the island's history. It was once a part of the Bering Land Bridge, which once extended into the Arctic Ocean and allowed animals and ancient peoples to cross from the mainland. Although the last of the woolly mammoths died some 4,000 years ago, they once thrived in the northern hemisphere in areas from Spain to Alaska. As the Earth began to warm, they lost their habitat, so finding the remains on St. Paul Island is an important link to the past and a striking reminder of how our current species could also be at risk as the globe continues to grow warmer every year. Another discovery of dwarf mammoths on Siberia's Wrangel Island shows that environment were not the only threats to the survival of this ancient species. As sea levels rose, the mammoths became trapped on the island. Because they were so isolated, inbreeding amongst those that remained ended up having stark consequences to the species. Genetic mutations such as developmental defects and low sperm count meant the mammoths were not very healthy, which could have been a contributing factor to their extinction. With a population that was too small and a lack in genetic diversity, these ancient mammoths eventually died out some 3,700 years ago. Canadian Viking settlement. In 1960, the first Viking settlement in North America was discovered by a Norwegian explorer on Canada's east coast. In 2016, a second similar settlement was spotted using satellite data. A far cry from the original discovery found by surveying unusual grass mounds in Newfoundland, the second settlement is about 375 miles, 600 kilometers south of the original one. Known as Point Rose, the site was shown to have high levels of iron, as well as turf walls, ash residue, roasted ore, and a fire-cracked boulder. A space archaeologist named Sarah Parsak detected the buried structures and excavated the turf walls and ironwork fireplace of the site's previous inhabitants. Using remote sensing tools to comb the area for buried objects, the group found 28 pounds, 12 kilograms of slag used to roast iron ore, a key component in the nails used to build those great Viking ships. If more evidence can be uncovered, it would be the second settlement in the Canadian province. Lonso Meadows is where Norse sailors first settled in the continent, building simple homes and huts 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Cold spot in space. For many years, scientists have tried to explain the origin of a mysterious large cold region in the sky. The supervoid is known as a cold spot, the radiation left over from the birth of the universe. Scientists believe one possibility for the cold spot is that it was caused by a supervoid that light has traveled through, but it could also be a genuine cold reading from the early universe. Spanning more than 1 billion light years across, the cold spot was first observed in 2004 by NASA and later confirmed by the European Space Agency. Appearing in the southern celestial hemisphere, there are many theories surrounding the cold spot, including contamination from the Milky Way or an unusual celestial object. But some conspiracy theorists even point to the possibility that the spot is evidence of a collision between our universe and a parallel universe. The galaxies found in the supervoid have a much lower density than they do in the rest of the universe. But could that really mean it is the doorway to a parallel universe? Visible on maps of what is known as the Cosmic Microwave Background, or CMB, these photos show what the universe looked like when it was 380,000 years old. To determine its origin, scientists take surveys of thousands of galaxies, spreading them out according to their wavelengths. This provides a pattern of lines emitted by different elements in the galaxy. So the further the galaxy is, the longer these wavelengths appear, showing exactly how far away these galaxies are. In studying these wavelengths, researchers could not explain why there was such a large void where the cold spot is located, and that is where the idea of clashing multiverses came from. More observations will be needed in order to understand the mysteries of the universe, and hopefully future observations using space-based telescopes can get a better idea what this enigma is. Sharks in a volcano. For those with a fear of what lurks beneath the surface of the ocean, a group of sharks found swimming at the bottom of a volcano might make you think twice about getting back into the water. In 2015, a group of scientists on a National Geographic expedition discovered the sharks inside one of the most active underwater volcanoes on Earth. Are you wondering how they were able to explore the volcano in the first place? The main peak, Cavachi, was not erupting during their visit, giving researchers the opportunity to drop instruments into the crater. That's how they spotted the hammerheads and silky sharks living inside. While the very hot, acidic water seems to be an inhospitable place, the sharks seem to thrive there. Humans cannot survive there, but after lowering their cameras, scientists spotted jellyfish, crabs, stingrays, and various sharks in the cave located in the Solomon Islands. Their discovery is one that shows that even in the deep sea, animals will find a way to adapt to their environments no matter how dangerous it may seem. The hot, acidic water made for cloudy observations and initially led scientists to wonder how any animals could survive there. But these sharks have proven that despite the inhospitable conditions, they have been able to adapt in the most unlikely of places. Cheruti Mastodon Site. A surprising find at a site in California points to evidence that ancient humans could have been present some 100,000 years before previously thought. Found at the Cheruti Mastodon site near modern-day San Diego, the artifacts were discovered by a team including archaeologists from the Center for American Paleolithic Research and the San Diego Natural History Museum. 130,000 years ago, the climate was warm and wet and would have submerged any land connection between northern Asia and Alaska. Humans migrated to North America in small canoes or other vessels that would have allowed them to travel down the Pacific coast. Researchers believe that those who settled in Southern California could have been Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo erectus. But if the evidence were to point to Homo sapiens, it would be a startling discovery as there is no evidence true humans reached that part of the world that long ago. The remains found in the Southern California site, however, show them as tool users, although no fossils of the humans have been found to this date. Researchers believe they broke apart the bones of the huge mastodons to obtain the marrow inside. Scientists also believe they would have later turned the bone fragments into tools. Excavation at the site occurred in 1992 and 1993 after being exposed during a construction project. Backhoes and heavy construction equipment had to be brought in to move the mastodon bones, which led some to believe that the markings on the bones were in fact from the modern construction and not the ancient peoples who are hypothesized to have settled here. At the time, the ancient Southern California landscape also had many streams which could have caused the broken mastodon bones to clash against large stones, leaving marks on them. However, a sediment layer at the San Diego site had pieces of mastodon bones, some of which were broken apart spread among large bones. After using stones to break elephant bones on large rocks nearby, researchers found they had sustained similar damage as the ancient bones. Although more research will need to be done on the mastodon remains, the discovery is an exciting one with the potential to rewrite history. Toxic air killed the dinosaurs. Everyone has heard about the asteroid that impacted Mexico, effectively wiping out the dinosaurs, but could they have died from more natural causes? 66 million years ago, when an asteroid almost 9 miles, 15 kilometers in diameter, slammed into the Earth, it delivered a force equivalent to 10 billion atom bombs. But is it possible this event, known as the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, is not the only reason the dinosaurs went extinct? In the aftermath, global temperatures plummeted and soot and sulfur reduced the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth. But new research shows that temperatures rebounded after the event, and the release of sulfur when the asteroid slammed into sulfur-rich rocks triggered an onslaught of acid rain. Imagine all the oceans the remaining dinosaurs relied upon for water acidifying, and all the plants dissolving from intense acid rain. There would be no way the dinosaurs could have survived with no food or water. One piece of evidence of this theory is the fact that fern plants, which grow well in acidic soil, were the only ones to survive the impact and recolonized Earth the quickest after the event. Even though the effects of the asteroid's impact only took minutes to hours, it would take the Earth another 100,000 years to return to its previous state, allowing plants to once again grow and animals to thrive. Lost civilization in Bosnia. In the spring of 2016, an archaeologist discovered a strange stone sphere in the forests of Bosnia. But what exactly is the massive stone ball and how did it get there? After studying the phenomena for 15 years, Sam Osmanongic believes the stone ball was the largest found in Europe. At the time of its discovery, less than half of the ball had been uncovered, but it is estimated to be between 4 and 5 feet. Its distinct brown and red coloring point to it having a very high iron content, with preliminary weight calculations coming in at over 30 tons. Similar stones have previously been discovered in Costa Rica, but if the calculations of this one are to be believed, it would be twice as heavy as those. The fact that it was also probably made by hand would mean it is the largest man-made stone ball. This is a remarkable find, since it would have taken an advanced civilization from the distant past to have made such an object with their primitive tools. They would have also needed to have advanced knowledge of geometrical shapes. Some experts still believe the sphere is a natural formation and not a man-made one, though pointing to a phenomena known as spheroidal weathering that results in concentric or spherical layers of highly decayed rock. Whether it is man-made or something out of nature, the find is a fascinating one, and it deserves further study to determine its origin. What did you think of these strange discoveries? Which did you think was the most fascinating? What else do you think lies out there that's waiting to upend our current worldview? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.